Part 165. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1646. Princess Norrell had a long dream. In the dream, she seemed to have turned into a seed grown on a giant tree. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter, the 4 seasons cycle, blossom, and bear fruit, gradually gestate and become full on the giant tree. Then, it was held dearly by a pair of slender hands and planted into a carefully selected fertile open space. She slept in that open space for many years. Listen to the raindrops, the howling wind, the chirping of birds, and the rustling of insects. Listen to the owner of those hands, expectantly, depressedly, and annoyed, repeating over and over again in the forest. Why hasn't it sprouted yet? Why hasn't it sprouted yet? Why are you still sleeping? You're too lazy. All the seeds planted by your friends have sprouted. Why don't you sprout? Princess Norrell smiled slightly in her dream. Why it doesn't sprout? Of course it's because it hasn't been a good time for sprouting yet. You have to sleep enough, absorb enough strength, and accumulate enough strength to be able to stand out and grow taller and taller. Finally, she broke out of the ground and grew into a sapling, standing in the dense forest. Surrounded by towering trees that are much taller than her, they are straight and tall, with dense crowns that cover the surrounding fields. Under the shade of the tree canopy, there are young and old elves playing around, reading, playing musical instruments, falling in love, or working hard to study various knowledge. And she was standing in the lush clearing carefully chosen by the young elf, looking up at her powerful companions. Stretch out the branches and leaves, receive the sunshine and rain, and strive to grow. The breeze blew by, and the surrounding leaves rustled. It was the older companion telling her. Grow up quickly. Grow up quickly. When you grow up, you can, like us, extend your roots, penetrate deeply into the earth's veins, and guide the flow of underground energy. Together with your friends, you can become nodes of the magic circle, providing comfort and tranquility for the elves who take care of us and rely on us. Then, disaster strikes. Glare. High fever. Tremendous shock. The most powerful friends inside disappeared in an instant. She didn't even have time to hear their whines. Then, there were the friends around her, one after another. They tried their best to absorb the energy of the magic circle, and tried their best to use the crowns and leaves to prop up the defense. In this way, they only delayed a little, a very short time. Then, an elf girl who often took care of her, often came to water her, adjust the magic circle around her, and pay attention to whether her branches were infested with insects, rushed over in a hurry. He threw himself on her tree trunk and prayed urgently. Go quickly. Go quickly. Pull out the roots quickly. Follow me. The elders can't hold it anymore, there's not much time left. The elf girl's voice was hasty, pale, filled with tears and blood. After praying, he pressed his hands on the ground. The ground cracked, the soil rolled, and sand and gravel surged up. Before she could figure out what was going on, she followed the elf girl's words and closed up the tree roots and even the trunk, trying her best to curl up into a ball. The elf girl carried her on her shoulders, turned into a giant bear, lowered her head and started running. Run. Run. Run as hard as you can. Leave the explosion, leave the danger, leave hometown. She bumped on the elf girl's back. The tree trunk was stained with wet, hot liquid, which was the girl's blood. She quietly unfolded some leaves, trying to activate a healing spell, but she only heard a click. The surrounding magical elements are in chaos. Nothing can be guided. The violent force rushed back and even hurt her own branches. Fortunately, the elf girl was reliable enough, or tough enough. When her branches and leaves were withered, pieces fell, and even the bark was dry and cracked, The elf girl finally rushed out of the danger center with her on her back and plunged into the hinterland of the rainforest. Then, another group of elders responded. They sadly circled countless circles deep in the rainforest, trying countless times to soothe nature but failing. In the end, they left home and embarked on another journey, and she, surrounded by elves, traveled across the ocean. The salty sea breeze. Raging or gentle waves. There were also bumps and shakes that were big and sometimes small, but seemed to never stop. She rocked in the boat for a long, long time. It seemed like one cycle, or many seasons, and finally, she and the elves set foot on the land again. Then, the elves built a huge energy pool and planted her beside the energy pool. She absorbed and swallowed the violent energy, grew up rapidly, overlooked the dense forest, and broke through the sky. Sorting out the violent energy, guiding the magic circle, and providing sufficient protection and care to the elves who love her and take care of her. They called her World Tree. Princess Norrell frowned tightly, feeling as if her entire body was scattered and torn apart by violent force. Don't be afraid, she thought, this situation is normal, and the dream of the World Tree is also normal. She, her brother, and her mother are legends of the elf royal family from generation to generation. They live in the World Tree, listening to its breath and feeling its breath, for 10 years, hundreds of years, hundreds of years. Therefore, when they set foot in the legend, they are very likely to be guided by the World Tree and feel the path that the World Tree has traveled. And on this road, naturally, there are the sufferings that the World Tree endured when it guided the Well of Eternity. Just endure it, she thought, and you'll be safe. After all, Little Greet invited his teachers and senior brothers to adjust the Well of Eternity. The World Tree will no longer suffer when it guides magical power. As long as you follow this path, you have a good chance of becoming a legend safely and unscathed. But this is not right. Princess Norrell suddenly woke up. She is an elf, a tree, especially not the World Tree. You can refer to it, you can understand it, but if you follow the path of World Tree, she will turn into a tree. Her torso, her limbs, and her entire body will become lignified and become a complete tree. The last step to ascend to the legend is to confirm self and maintain self. She cannot be assimilated or coerced. She must maintain the perception of self and take this final step. But where is the key point of being separated from the World Tree and becoming an independent self? When she thought of this, Princess Norrell immediately felt her body swaying. The power of nature surged and boiled, and the huge torrent of elements made her consciousness chaotic and almost unable to control herself. It's so difficult, it's so difficult. The size of the World Tree is too large. To stay awake in such a large size and such a strong force of nature, the mental strength required is really strong. She still has to find an entry point, a point where she and World Tree can be distinguished and where they can gain a firm foothold. Huh. Time Dragon Sains was suddenly surprised. The dragon's neck turned, its colorful hourglass pupils moved away from the hut, and turned to look at the Lord of Thunder. Interesting, really interesting. What's wrong? The Lord of Thunder was a little embarrassed by him. What happened to Norrell? Why is the time dragon next to him staring at him? Could it be that this dragon saw something different from the turbulence of time? It's really interesting, your fate is intertwined with hers. If it weren't for you, she might not have embarked on such a path. What kind of way? The hair on the back of Lord Thunder's neck stood up. If it weren't for him, the elf princess might not have left Evermead Island. If little Gretel hadn't tried every means to cure the elf prince, Princess Norrell might have become the queen, taken over the crown, and embarked on a smoother road that has been traveled by countless predecessors. Under the care of the queen, within the mythical lock supported by the World Tree, her path will be safe and smooth. Even if she fails, the probability of encountering danger is not high. But now, she followed him across the ocean, thousands of miles away. I have seen countless different scenery and experienced a completely different life. So, when she makes the leap to the other side, will she embark on a strange path because of these experiences, and encounter danger on this path? Those hourglass-shaped eyes turned back again, as if they had lost interest in him, and were only staring in the direction of the elf princess. But this time, the torrent of elements gathered together, condensing into a vision that could be seen by mortal eyes. Surprises spread. What a big tree! World tree! Look, it's World tree. It should be no problem. It is said that when the elf royal family comes to legend, most of the visions that appear are the World tree. The elf royal family is a family blessed by the World tree. It is said that when this queen ascended to the legend, the shadow of the World tree also appeared. Idian and Ashmoonsong whispered to each other. The shadow of the giant tree rose from the ground. The trunk alone enveloped the entire hut, and expanded outwards to a diameter of about 10 meters. And the tree trunks are tall and towering, absorbing all the green clouds above. Continue to rise, penetrate the flowing clouds, and the branches and leaves stretch. A huge, translucent shadow enveloped the entire valley. Then, the whole giant tree began to tremble. There is an invisible force that is sucked upward from the roots of the tree, pours into the trunk, and is dispersed among the branches and leaves. Rotation, accumulation, decomposition. The Lord of Thunder suddenly floated upward. It rises 10 meters, 100 meters, until it is level with the illusory tree crown. He opened his arms as if to embrace the tree crown, feeling the power wholeheartedly. What a familiar force! What a familiar wave! It was exactly the same as every time he tested the explosion. Princess Norrell stepped forward to appease and heal nature, the kind of gentle and peaceful power fluctuations. Moreover, the pulsation of this tree crown is also mixed with the unique energy fluctuations that will occur in the near future to channel radioactive damage. Norrell. Norrell. Do you want to advance with this? Do you want to become a legend by being a natural healer or a healer of radioactive destruction? Thanks to @Emochenbay for the 200 starting coin reward. Thanks to @Sheep6 for the 100 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1647. Princess Norrell smiled and spread her arms. Face the breeze, face the flowing clouds, face the moonlight that shines down once again after the day and night cycle. On the shadow of the World tree, every leaf, every branch, and the thick and straight trunk were coated with a faint silver light. For a moment, the silver light swirled and penetrated the tree, and the World tree solidified little by little under the shining of the silver moon. Ms. Silver Moon, we are your children, we are your favored race. On the ground, Idian and Ashmoonsong sang prayer songs side by side. Even Appa ran to the top of the mountain and stood beside them. The child with a pair of antlers on his head clasped his hands, held a handful of moonlight, stumbled, and sang along with them. Your light will always shine on us and guide us on the way home. If it were ever Meat Island, if it was Silver Moon Festival, there would be thousands of elves playing musical instruments and singing songs praising Lady Silver Moon. However, even if there are only 2 elves singing, or even no one singing, it doesn't matter. The elves are originally the children favored by Lady Silver Moon. The royal family of elves have been the priests of Lady Silver Moon since ancient times. There are even rumors that the elf royal family are descendants of Lady Silver Moon. When Princess Norrell enters the legend, Lady Silver Moon will naturally give her blessings, so why does she need others to sing her praises? The shadow of the World tree gradually solidified and then gradually converged. It descends little by little, and the shape of the crown, branches, leaves, and trunks also blurs little by little. At this time, the Lord of Thunder's heart was in his throat. Whether it succeeds or not depends on this moment. From virtuality to reality, from energy converging into matter, From virtual shadow into substance. Climbing into the legend is the last step. If you take it well, you will reach the sky in one step. If you don't do it well. Ms. Silver Moon, please protect Norrell. He never believed in gods, let alone the gods of elves. Even on the Silver Moon festival, he only listened to prayer songs and bowed his head to show respect. However, at this moment, he looked up at the Silver Moon sincerely and prayed in a low voice. She is the princess of the elves, the daughter of the elven royal family who has believed in you and worshipped you for generations. Divine blood flows in her veins, she worships the Silver Moon, loves nature and has always kept your teachings and precepts in mind. In my heart. Don't worry, a hoarse chuckle suddenly sounded. The Lord of Thunder suddenly turned his head and saw that the time dragon Sains had returned to his human form and was staggering back. He didn't even bother to take a look at the green hut full of white flowers, the vibrant grass outside the hut, and the figures in the hut. The river of time has ended. Facing the confused gaze of the Lord of Thunder, time dragon Sains shrugged boredly. There's nothing to see in the back. With a relaxed look on his face, he walked out of the crowd and walked away. The Lord of Thunder could not rest assured and continued to stand at the entrance of the valley, looking forward to it. The moon moved across the sky inch by inch, until the silver moon set in the west and the sun burst out. The door of the hut opened with a creak, and Princess Norrell slowly walked out, nodding and smiling at him. She seemed not to have changed at all, but also seemed to be completely different. From the tips of the hair to the feet, there is a shallow halo, like pearls, like light mist. His eyes are bright and energetic, and between his brows, there is a noble and mysterious brilliance. This is the brilliance and demeanor that only a legend can have, or, to put it more clearly, this is a vision that only occurs when a legend has just become a legend and his power has not yet been fully restrained. Norrell. The Lord of Thunder dodged and teleported to the door of the hut. The elf princess opened her arms and threw herself into his arms. I succeeded. I succeeded. She put her cheek against her husband's shoulder and whispered repeatedly. I have entered the legend, Kristen, from now on, we can be together forever, for a long time. Elves are immortal species, but their lives also have an end. The longevity brought by racial blood does not always depend on advancement. The longevity brought by relying on the essential change of life force is more reliable. The body will weaken and the soul will decay. Only by standing at the legendary level can we smile and watch the clouds roll and relax, and overlook the passage of time. Yes, from now on, we can always be together. The Lord of Thunder stroked her hair gently, and after a while, he took her hand and led her out. Outside the valley, emerald dragons, green dragons, gold dragons, and silver dragons, the dragon clan who came to watch and experience, as well as nature priests and magicians, have been waiting for a long time. At this moment, we can finally gather around to congratulate her. Congratulations to Her Majesty the Princess for joining the legend. Congratulations on entering the realm of mystery. May nature always take care of you. May the silver moon always shine on your path. Gretel lined up honestly in the queue, following senior sister Philby. After the legends had finished congratulating themselves and the congratulations from outsiders, it was his and his senior sister's turn to go up. After saluting and saying congratulations, they exited in order, leaving their seats to the natural priests and magicians. Philby turned away and looked at her junior brother slowly walking behind, pausing every step and turning back every 3 steps. She couldn't help but come to pick him up. What's wrong? Walk faster and don't take up a seat. If you have anything to ask, please ask later in private. There are many opportunities. Yeah. Greet nodded honestly and was carried away by his senior sister. After walking out for a long time, he looked back at the teacher and his wife who were surrounded by the crowd, then turned around and looked at Idian and Ashuedge, and his pace slowed down again. What's wrong with you? Archmage Philby had no choice but to fly out a mage's hand, and once again took Gretel and turned around. What did you think of again? I just thought, I am also level 17, and the teacher has come over to provide guidance. Some previous projects can be promoted quickly, for example, the legendary dragon and so on. Fertility problems in the legendary dragon clan. The question is how to make the legendary dragon clan increase the probability of reproducing offspring. After overcoming this problem, the next step is the problem of the teacher and his wife having children, right? After all, the reproductive capacity of the elves has always been a problem, and the legendary fertility is an even bigger problem. A legendary third-level magician and a legendary elf, without outside intervention, might not be able to have a child for 1,000 years. Just look at the elf queen. As a king, and with the blessing of Lady Silvermoon, she didn't have any children after she entered the legend. But. Archmage Philby rolled her eyes, raised her hand, and slapped Greet on the back of the head. You've had enough. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1648. I was almost assimilated by World Tree. After the congratulatory crowd was gone, the couple stood next to each other. Princess Norrell smiled and told her husband about her advancement process. Especially the most dangerous stage, the moment of life and death. I woke up and remembered that I was an elf, not the World Tree, but I couldn't find the opportunity to break free. Until I remembered that after the elves stopped the Well of Eternity, they built a new one to separate the radioactive damage and energy. She talked about that experience leisurely, with a distant look in her eyes. Then, I began to adjust the energy method, channeling, diffusing, and diluting the energy, trying to appease nature and reduce the harm of radioactive energy to nature, just like I have done many times before. The Lord of Thunder held his wife's left hand and looked at her elegant silhouette intently. After successfully advancing to legend, Princess Norrell's whole temperament is different from before. She is more confident and calm, and the faint anxiety and hesitation before can no longer be seen. So, you have embarked on an unprecedented path. This is very good. The achievements will be much higher than ordinary nature walkers, but the road is also more difficult. It requires a lot of effort on your part. It just so happens that I am going to do research in this area next. If you participate in the project with me, you will advance faster. Princess Norrell burst out laughing. Her eyes flashed, and she gently approached her husband's arms. Participating in the research, of course it's good. But Kristen, I'm also in the legend now, can we, Well, let it take its course, I'm not in a hurry, and neither are you, we have plenty of time. Let nature take its course, let nature take its course. A legendary third level and a legendary elf, if there is no external intervention, they may not be able to get pregnant naturally in 1,000 years. Fortunately, legendary masters have long lifespans and can afford to wait. If you don't get pregnant for 10 years, wait another 10 years. If you don't get pregnant for 100 years, wait another 100 years. Moreover, the Lord of Thunder has no relatives, and Princess Norrell's relatives are all far away from each other, so no one would think about giving birth every day. Of course, students are the exception. Isn't it necessary to study the Dragon Clan issue anyway? Gretel felt confident and spread his hands as a matter of course. The needs of the Dragon Clan are placed in front of them, and they are willing to provide resources and so on. As long as the legendary dragon can be successfully pregnant, this research result can be used for assisted reproduction of legendary elves if it is pushed a little further. Archmage Philby looked at Greet steadily. Although she brought her team all the way here, in the final analysis, it was to solve the dragon's reproduction problem, but Gretel was so determined to solve the teacher's reproduction problem together. Even using her brain behind her back made her feel so weird. Anyway, don't mention this in front of the teacher and mistress, she had to remind her, and even used her mage's hand to hang by Greet's ear, making a futile gesture of lifting the ear. When teachers and others have needs, they will naturally come to you. If they don't come to you, you are not allowed to say a word. Of course, I'm not stupid. Gretel spread out his hands leisurely. Anyway, you can never have too much technology. Just reserve it. If the teacher can't use it, there are others who need it. With so many legendary mages in the council, even half of them want to have descendants. Even if the female legendary mages don't want to get pregnant themselves, the immortal one can't help him here. There are so many legends. For example, time barrier Mr. Steiner, it seems that his family was completely wiped out. After escaping alone, he devoted himself to research, never got married, and had no offspring. For example, Mr. Ripley in Jade Crown, this old man lived a long time, and it seems that his grandchildren have not outlived him. Maybe he wants a new child. For example, time traveler Mr. McDowell, this playboy has traveled to all planes and met beauties from all planes, but he seems to have no heirs. If the technology is successfully developed, who says they don't want their own children? Even if there are disciples, students, and disciples, for many people in this world, these existences cannot replace blood descendants. And the nobles of the Kingdom of Kent. For high-level warriors, such as His Excellency Rose Sword Master, who is the trump card of the royal family, if he has a son, why would he bother to train nephews and grandnephews? Also, the nobles of the Kingdom of Kent, the Kingdom of Brolin, the Kingdom of Rhine, and the newly established Kingdom of Capet have been settled. Are their legends greedy? Well, anyway, let's take it slow. The dragon clan's needs have been solved, and the problem of human legends has basically been solved. Well, actually you also have this need, right? Archmage Philby squinted. Gretel once said that he would not consider holding a real wedding until he became a legend. He even hoped that Cyrera would become a legend before getting married. So, how many years would it take for a legendary magician and a legendary dragon to get married? Child. Senior sister, I think we should start working quickly. Gretel's eyes wandered and he quickly began to change the topic. I think the dragon clan's patience is running out. Even if the dragon clan doesn't have much patience, it's still measured in 10 or hundreds of years. Within a year or two, Gretel has proven his ability to solve the fertility problem of an adult dragon, even though it is only a problem for infertile people. Archmage Philby felt that it was extraordinary that Gretel could solve the pregnancy and childbirth problems of a mature dragon within 10 years. As for getting rid of the legendary dragon, it can be completed within 100 years. The dragon clan should be able to accept it, right? Of course, it would be best if it can be delayed until 100 years before completion. In this case, the parliament can be happy, continue the alliance with the dragon clan for 100 years, and consume 100 years of research resources on Dragon Island. Even if there are only 1 or 2 mage towers and dozens of magicians, it will greatly reduce Nivis's burden. Among these magicians, even if there are a dozen 9-ring magicians, 3 or 4 half-step legends, 1 legend. Don't be in a hurry, take your time. You see, the teacher is already here. He won't cause too much loss to the dragon clan. In the short term, the dragon clan will not press for debts like a debt, you can study it step by step. Is it okay to stretch your boundaries a little? For example, after researching and studying, you finally got an accelerator? After studying and studying, did the research content go deep into the atomic level? As we study and study, maybe we will delve deeper into the nature of the supernatural? Anyway, the dragon clan has so many resources. As long as the connection can be found theoretically, it doesn't matter if we use a little resource. Well, Which direction do you plan to study next? Keep pushing the accelerator. Greet let out a long breath and fell back. Senior sister, we have just begun the research on accelerators. When I advanced, high-energy electron flow, atomic transitions, and extraordinary nature were just conjectures and have not been verified yet. Can every atom enter a transition state after being hit by a high-energy electron stream? How much energy does an atom that enters a transition state have to lose before it exits the transition state? In what way does this loss of energy occur? When an atom in a transition state loses energy, what does it emit? Is it a wave? Or particles? Is it light? Still hot? Or other forms of energy? At a chromosome point, what percentage of the atoms must enter the transition state for the entire point to become extraordinary? For a chromosome point that appears to be extraordinary, how many atoms must exit the transition state before the entire point becomes dim? Where exactly is this dividing line? Also, how do the extraordinary chromosome points resonate with the world? Is it possible that only extraordinary points can mobilize extraordinary energy? What is the nature of the extraordinary energy floating in this world? With just a little thought, Greet could come up with a few or a dozen topics at will. As for how to refine these topics, how to implement research, and how many resources are needed to conduct research. You want to know all this? Archmage Philby's face turned pale. Just with these current topics, the accelerator on Cyrilla's territory is already busy day and night, and is occupied 24 hours a day. Gretel throws out such a lot of topics again. Accelerator, accelerator. How many accelerators do we need to build? Or, she takes a project herself and conducts research all day long by rubbing her hands to accelerate the flow of electrons, so as to reduce the need for experimental equipment in the laboratory? Senior sister, just tell me if you want to know. Greet simply started to lie. Archmage Philby was stunned for a moment, shook her head and smiled. Want to know? How could you not want to know? No magician, a magician who still has expectations for his own growth, does not want to know the secrets of this world. In particular, a magician of the plasticity system, a magician who is in the cutting-edge field of plasticity research, would simply want to eat and sleep in it every day for the latest big thing like an accelerator. So are you planning to create another one? Will the Dragon Clan be willing? Her voice began to tremble. This accelerator has been built, but it hasn't achieved results yet. Your advancement can't be considered an achievement, right? It has to be something substantial and beneficial to the Dragon Clan to be considered an achievement, right? Well, then. Gretel's eyes began to wander. He also found it difficult. He felt it was hard to speak, and he felt it was hard to blackmail the Dragon Clan again. Even if it's blackmail, you have to wait for new results, right? For example, which pair of giant dragons in their prime, who have been childless for many years, successfully help them get pregnant? But an adult dragon and a mature dragon are not the same thing. An adult dragon is usually between level 15 and 16, and a mature dragon can reach up to half a legend. The cells of half-step legend are extremely active and have extremely strong self-healing power. Looking under a microscope, as long as there is enough energy, chromosomes can replicate, and replicate, cells divide rapidly, and wounds heal dozens of times faster than humans. However, if you take out these divided cells batch by batch and examine them, you will find that those extraordinary chromosomes have faded a bit. If the first batch of cells has 100 extraordinary points, the second batch only has 95. By the third batch of divided cells, it is questionable whether there are 85 or not. So the extraordinary spots in sperm and eggs will also fade so much. Theoretically it's possible. Gretel was thinking, brushing, and writing on the scratch pad. Regardless of whether they are adults, mature dragons, or legendary dragons, the offspring they give birth to are always little ones. Starting at level 3-4, you need to grow up slowly to have more abilities. As for young dragons, juvenile dragons, and young dragons, according to his long-standing experimental records, the number of extraordinary points in their chromosomes is far lower than that of high-level dragons. You have to grow up year by year and advance step by step before you can reach a high enough level and release the power inherited in your bloodline. Therefore, sperm and eggs either faded at the moment when reproductive cells are produced, or they gradually faded after being combined and dividing again and again, and gradually lost their extraordinary power. What exactly is going on? To know this question, either do an experiment, or do an experiment. Eggs cannot be used for the time being, and retrieving eggs is too laborious and harmful to the body. In modern egg retrieval, you need to take an ovulation-stimulating injection first, inject high-concentration hormones into the body, and then let the ovaries absorb them. After the follicles mature, a long and thick needle is inserted into the body to remove the mature eggs. Such surgery may cause pelvic infection, ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, premature ovarian failure, ovarian torsion and other diseases. Greet saw the most terrifying patient. Pelvic inflammation produced a large amount of ascites, and his belly was as big as the third trimester of pregnancy. It took him half a month to drain the ascites. Even if he is a dragon with strong recovery ability, even if he has the knowledge of treatment, he still regards egg retrieval as a last resort, and does not use it if possible. But taking sperm. Greet stopped and walked to the window, holding onto the window frame and looking into the distance. Retrieving sperm is very simple. There is a resident dragon in the mage tower, a male and an adult dragon. It is very convenient to order sperm. You can compare it with the chromosomes of somatic cells at will. However, if you find a dragon once, you have to owe a favor. Gretel thought for a while, looked around, then looked down at the soles of his feet. If you want high-level creatures from level 17 to 19, he has them here. There are quite a few in the mage tower. Except for those necromancers who have been bathing in negative energy for a long time, there may be problems with sperm activity and may not be suitable for use. Other male magicians can have it again. Well, he is quite old to be able to advance to level 17 or above. Maybe, he should start with himself? Greet secretly picked up a test tube, rushed into the bathroom, and closed the door. Gretel? Where are you? What are you doing? Cyrilla? Don't come in. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1649. Greet's work went quite smoothly. He himself got involved, so others were naturally embarrassed not to cooperate with the experiment. Moreover, in order to facilitate the advancement of research, Gretel first issued an order, starting with various monsters. Sampling, contrasting, sampling, contrasting, sampling, contrasting. Boom, 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 boom. In the mage tower, the microscope, and the calculation center of the mage tower, the tower spirit, have not stopped for this period of time. Even the oak staff was very busy. The oak tree spread its crown, and hundreds of fruits were swaying on the branches. The runes inside were spinning rapidly, and they were constantly calculating. Level 1 Demon Frog number 1278, Oral Epithelial Cell Chromosomes, Extraordinary Spot Content, Sperm Chromosomes, Extraordinary Spot Content. Level 1 Demon Frog number 1279. Oral Epithelial Cell Chromosomes, Sperm Chromosomes. Level 2 Demon Frog. Level 5 Demon Frog King number 138. Pseudo Dragon No 035. After working hard for more than 10 days, the general conclusion finally came out. Germ cells, or to be more precise, male gametes, as part of the body cells, of course, have the same vitality and energy as the body cells. Of course, this is a monster, not a human being. However, after getting general results from Warcraft and verifying the conjecture, it would be much more convenient to take samples from humans. Greet went there personally, chatted privately with the magicians one by one, and asked them to participate in the research. As expected, half of the high-level mages are willing to help. Do you need it? That's no problem, just wait a moment. I will send invisible servants to deliver what you need soon. Don't worry, we will do it according to the operating procedures and will not contaminate the samples. Why not help? Everyone worked under him, took his resources, and worked on his projects. Don't say that he came to visit quietly, please be polite, even if he gave an order to collect. Well, collecting this kind of thing is still a bit difficult to describe. You can still find ways to evade it or get away with it. However, he is young, has a bright future, and is almost destined to become a legend. Not to mention, he is also a medical magician who has always been kind to others. If you give him a sample of yourself, you don't have to worry about him using it to make a curse or something. Help if you can. Maybe one day, with this kindness, I can ask him to see a doctor. Of course, after all, there are still some magicians who refuse to help. Some are unable to lose face, some are eroded by negative energy for a long time, and some of them are older after all. Gretel collected a large number of human samples as he wished. The microscope, the electron microscope, the tower spirit and the oak staff once again started working to the death. Archmage Mensk. Archmage Dixon. Archmage Prud. Dragon Vein Warrior A, Dragon Vein Warrior B, Dragon Vein Warrior C. Yudian. Gretel squinted his eyes, staring at the various numbers that were constantly brushed on the light screen, and he picked up his pen to write and draw and write and draw. In older magicians, sperm activity will decrease and fragments will increase. At the same time, chromosomes may also be affected. Of course, it's possible, not certain. In previous lives, the sperm of older men had a higher probability of chromosome replication problems. When children are born, the probability of genetic diseases is greater. But in this world, with the existence of extraordinary factors, some people's sperm may be weaker, and some people's bodies will be stronger if they are nourished by extraordinary energy. Moreover, magicians and warriors are different. The magician's body is weaker, and the warrior's body is stronger. Physical strength, maybe, will affect the normality of chromosomes and the probability of packet loss. Tailing could do the calculations, but Gretel had to provide the formula, or the idea behind the formula. And maybe we have to make a regression equation. It's so difficult. Gretel banged her head on the table. After smashing it, continue writing, calculating, and drafting. After drafting, let the tower spirit try to calculate. If the trial calculation is unsuccessful, smash the table again, modify it, and let the tower spirit try the calculation a second time. After smashing the table so many times, if it weren't for the healing power, Greet would have made a lump the size of an egg on his forehead, and finally came to the conclusion. For older magicians, the number of extraordinary points in the chromosomes of germ cells is slightly lower than that of somatic cells, but not much lower. Select healthy, highly active germ cells for observation, and the number of extraordinary points will be roughly the same. Greet's eyes turned black and she was in a state of ecstasy. The only advantage, or rather, the only thing that makes him proud is, I'm still very strong, he. Even a high-level mage, even a half-step legend, cannot resist the passage of time. Some of the top high-level mages are over 150 or even 200 years old. They are powerless and unable to cooperate with the research. There are many magicians who can cooperate with the research, who are in their 70s, 80s, and over 100 years old. The samples taken were terrible, with the proportion of unqualified sperm reaching over 50%, and even over 70%. It's better for me. Completely healthy. Strong activity. The probability of excellence is extremely high. High-level mage, high-level natural priest, under the infiltration and care of the natural breath for a long time, the body is washed by the world's gifts over and over again. His current level is no different from that of a teenage boy. Well, most of the high-level dragons, especially the legendary dragons, are older. Therefore, is it possible that the activity of male gametes is relatively weak and unable to form fertilized eggs? This is a question that needs to be considered. If you have time, you want to do an experiment. It is best to do it on Warcraft and Dragon Beast first, and then take the experiment record and go to the Dragon Clan to ask for experimental materials. Greet spent half a month completing chromosome analysis experiments on male gametes and chromosome analysis experiments on female gametes of low-level monsters. The mage tower was stirred up by him. The magicians doing the experiment took samples, prepared them, and observed them under the microscope. They almost vomited, but before they could recover, they received the next order. From now on, we will do our best to observe the fertilized eggs of the demon frog king. Every time they divide, we must take samples for analysis and observe their chromosomes. Since the extraordinary number of chromosomes in reproductive cells is basically the same as that of somatic cells, then when they reach the hatchling stage or the cub stage, they will fade, which is a problem during the division process. Under the microscope, observe the fertilized egg of the demon frog king. The first time it divides, see how much the extraordinary points are missing. The second time it divides, see how much is missing. If you keep watching the frog eggs hatch, you can always find the answer. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1650. Greet is obsessed with research and can't help himself. A fertilized egg, split in half, no, a fertilized egg, split in two. Separate it under a microscope, observe half, and throw away the other half. The number of extraordinary chromosome points has been reduced by 1%. The number of extraordinary spots on the chromosome has not decreased. The number of extraordinary chromosome spots. A human fertilized egg divides approximately once every 15 to 17 hours, and it takes about 3 days to divide into a morula with 12 to 16 blostomers. The fertilized eggs of the demon frog king divide much faster, dividing once every 1 or 2 hours. Therefore, if you want to accurately observe cells after each division, you almost have to keep an eye on these gadgets, take samples in time, prepare samples in time, and throw them into the microscope for observation in time. Greet only observed, and analyzed, while the magicians below were complaining endlessly. Whether it is the necromancy system or the transformation system, they are all immersed in front of the microscope 12 hours a day. Their eyes are straight, their hands are shaking, and they have a splitting headache. Ah! It's broken. Ah! It broke again. It's so difficult, I broke it with just a little shake of my hand. Ah, why can't they be separated? Why is the zona pellucida so tough? This needle is too thick. Ask the transformation master if he can make a thinner one. A thinner one. Ah! My head hurts so much, why is it so difficult to separate cells with mental power? Gretel was completely unmoved. The work of micro-injection requires a calm mind and steady hands. In the previous life, even an ordinary person could do it, let alone this group of extraordinary beings. Of course, not just any ordinary person can do it. Operators who can perform micro-injections stably can easily find a job in a reproductive assistance center with a monthly salary of 10,000 to 20,000 yuan. But they are not extraordinary either. There is no reason why ordinary people can't do things with the concentration, computing power, and strong mental power of extraordinary people. Not to mention, even a 10th level mage, after being washed away by magic, can still reach the level of a third or fourth level warrior. Strength, muscle strength, nerve reaction speed, agility, etc. are all far beyond the scope of normal people. It shouldn't be a problem to fiddle with the micro-injection. He hasn't let these people peel his eggs yet. Back then, Mr. Tong Dizhu peeled frog eggs under a microscope. The peeling was called stable and precise. Later, the disciples he brought out inherited his research methods and began to perform fish cell nuclear transplantation, and then bred a variety of freshwater fish with stable characteristics and delicious taste. The Chinese have a large number of cheap and delicious freshwater fish, thanks to the dedication of generations of biologists led by Mr. Tong Dizhu. In short, Gretel doesn't think these magicians can't do a simple job of cutting the zona pellucida and separating two cells. As for those magicians who don't want to use their hands, but must use mental power to separate cells. Magician Jean McCullough closed her eyes and rubbed her brows. Mage Nordmark found a total of 10 magicians to make samples for him, 5 of the necromancy type and 5 of the transmutation type. Among the 10 people, she was the one with the slowest progress. For no other reason, others use needles and special magic instruments to pick, but she is the only one who insists on using mental power to select and separate every cell. Under a microscope, cells can be seen, and even the internal structure of cells can be seen. However, it is too difficult to condense the mage's hand into a needle that is thin enough to pick apart cells. Even if she is a level 14 magician, this task is too difficult for her. The needle was condensed to 0.1 millimeters in diameter and 5 centimeters long, and she could only hold it for 1 minute. In other words, if she couldn't finish the work of removing cells in 1 minute, she could only rest, meditate, let herself recover, and then start all over again. But it's too difficult, it's too difficult. Others can do 10 cells in 1 hour, but she can't even do 5 in 1 hour. You can't do this. Jean, the magician responsible for delivering the samples to the attic, had to wait until she was very late every day, and he gradually became impatient. Everyone has finished, I'm just waiting for you. Otherwise, how about you try another way, finish the required tasks first, and then do whatever you want to do. Jean shook her head with a pale face. The amount of raw materials each person is allocated is limited. If she picks with a needle, the remaining egg cells will not be enough for her to practice. Moreover, after such a long time, other people's proficiency has already improved. Changing the method rashly will only make things worse, never better. Let's do this. I will do the work of delivering the samples. You collect the things everyone has prepared and I will deliver them together when the time comes. I will not delay your business. The colleague responsible for delivering the samples had one less job to do, so he shrugged and ignored her. A few days later, the teacher leading the team came over to take a look and shook his head. You're squeezing yourself too much, learn from them and just pick with a needle. Anyway, it's not like there's no equipment to use. Jean continued to shake her head. Although the failure rate is high, she can feel that her mental power is steadily increasing. She has been stuck at level 14 for almost 10 years. After this period of hard work, she actually feels slight progress. This opportunity is absolutely impossible to let go. It is said that Master Nordmark's current achievements have a lot to do with his training when he was young. When Nordmark was a first-level or second-level mage, he performed operations on people. All kinds of scalpels, surgical forceps, and surgical instruments were all condensed by the hands of the mage. What a powerful mental pressure it was. Teacher, I can still hold on, don't worry, I will never delay the mission. The level 17 archmage sighed and walked away unsteadily. Jean kept trying, until Greet came to see her in person. Jean, you can't do this. Gretel squinted his eyes, looked at her operations carefully through the microscope, and shook his head. You don't want to try to condense a needle that is too long at one time, 1 centimeter, at most 2 centimeters is enough. Too short. If it's too short, get a glass rod and let your mage's hand stick to it, Greet replied without hesitation. Who is using such a long needle? The strength of the material cannot be maintained. Make the short one first. Once your mental power increases, take your time. With Gretel's permission and guidance, Jean gritted her teeth and persisted. 1 day, 2 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, 2 months. Finally, there seemed to be a roar in her mind. The mental power shattered into pieces, and pieces bloomed, as if a mirror had been smashed, and the flying fragments reflected the sky. Which advanced level is this in the tower? Which one is this? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1651. Gretel ticked another check mark on the Mage Tower personnel list. He took 2 steps back, put his hands behind his back, and looked at the check marks one after another on the list, feeling happy. So far, the first batch of 200 people in the Mage Tower and the second batch of 100 people have advanced to more than a dozen levels. There is also a half-step legend like Senior Sister. There is also a high-level mage like him who advanced from level 16 to level 17 and entered the 9th ring. Of course, there are also the Nature Religion, his 2 disciples, and the other 2 nature priests. His teacher, Elder Irwin, has also gratifiedly stepped into a higher realm. In the Magic Council's assessment of the Master of the Mage Tower, member advancement accounts for a large part of the score. Moreover, each one counts, and there is no upper limit for accumulation. It is easy to push the score to exceed the full score. Then, of course, you can get more resources from the Parliament to support yourself and the magicians below. What does the Parliament provide resources for? Of course, high-level mages need to teach and guide low-level mages, provide them with resources, provide them with topics, and help them make progress quickly. Of course, if only one person advances for a long time, or even only the Master of the Mage Tower advances himself, the points will be deducted quite bleakly. If the score is low, resources will be deducted. The score has been low for several consecutive years. The Master of the Mage Tower may be transferred out of the local area and replaced by a new person. Who asked you to deprive others of their resources? Who asked you to pile all other people's research resources on you alone? Of course, like Gretel, he basically relies on collecting resources from the Dragon Clan. Nevis's resources are not used much, or even if they are used, they are exchanged at equal value. Nevis has no restrictions on his assessment. Force. However, everyone has eyes. We have communication with Nevis. A large number of mages, even a large number of high-level mages, advance faster than others. Then, a large number of magicians will compete for positions and come to work with their own food. The school behind them also gives whatever they ask for, and offers whatever they ask for. Otherwise, how could the airship from Nevis to Dragon Island run so diligently? Gretel's high-level tower spirit, microelectron microscope, various equipment and various materials are not available on Dragon Island. You have to ask Nevis for it. How can you get whatever you ask for if he asks? When the materials are not available, those magicians who come to work are willing to dig into their private rooms. It looks so beautiful, when will it be all ticked? Greet took another step back and looked up and down, satisfied. Of course, even if all the above are checked and the average person advances to one level, they still cannot catch up with the advancement of key groups. For example, Senior Sister sets foot on Legend. Think too much, it will take at least a few more years. Archmage Philby glared at him covertly. You have this time to appreciate it, seize the time and push forward the progress of the project. At least, the Dragon Clan can do something for them, help them do something. If we don't push forward the progress, the supply of the mage tower will be very high. Broken. Okay, senior sister, I understand, senior sister, I will do it immediately, senior sister. Gretel floated away dejectedly. Alas, senior sister is so strict that she doesn't even give him a little time to rest. The supply in the mage tower is clearly sufficient. As for those dragons who came and urged, they mainly gave gifts for themselves to advance, and also gave gifts for the master's wife to advance. They paid more and received less, so they worked hard, right? He got out obediently and received the representatives of the dragon clan. Some time ago, the research on World of Warcraft and human reproductive cells came to an end. To advance further, we need to use the dragon's reproductive cells. We have solicited the opinions of 52 male giant dragons. The golden dragon Thorngraf sat across from the desk and spread out a piece of animal skin, which was densely packed with various secret marks. The row on the left does not agree to provide germ cells for research. The row on the right says that they can provide them, but they must receive corresponding remuneration. Remuneration. Gretel was counting the number of secret marks and guessing which mark belonged to which dragon. Hearing this, he quickly raised his head. You need to be paid for providing research materials. Of course, Jin Long shrugged his shoulders matter-of-factly. I remember that the asking price of dragon blood in Nevis is 1,000 gold coins per drop. So the male dragon's reproductive cells, in any case, should be more than this price, right? 10,000 gold coins per drop. What a joke. Gretel almost flipped the table. For one drop of 10,000 gold coins, I will do a round of research and start with 1 million gold coins. Where did the Mage Tower get so much money? It is impossible for the Magic Council of Nevis to pay so much money. I can't afford it, Greet said with a straight face. Also, according to the previous agreement between the Mage Tower and the Dragon Clan, all relevant materials related to the Dragon Clan should be provided by the Dragon Clan without additional charges. Do you want to enjoy reproductive assistance services in the future? Do you want a discount or a deduction? So that's the problem. Thorngraf spread his hands. The reproductive cells you want come from almost all dragons, young dragons, adult dragons, and mature dragons. The dragons that need reproductive assistance services are basically mature dragons, old dragons, and legendary dragons. Therefore, those young and adult dragons do not need services, but they have to produce reproductive cells. They feel it is very unfair. The dragons who need services have no prospects for the time being. Let's do this, Gretel sighed. First find me 10 young dragons, 10 adult dragons, and 10 mature dragons. I have completed a round of research. If the results are good, maybe I can solve the problem of a certain mature dragon. Then, you go and settle it yourself. As long as the problem of mature dragons is solved, the adult dragons and young dragons will have to be solved by the mature dragons. But we can't afford the money. If you don't give me the germ cells, the project will be shelved. Greet calmly spread his hands and resorted to cheating. The eyes of Golden Dragon Thorngraf flickered, and flickered again, and finally sighed. Okay, I'll just trust you again. If nothing can be solved this time, we really can't invest any more. A large number of dragon male gametes arrived as promised. Greet endured the fishy smell that filled the room, one test tube after another, and kept doing microscopic examinations. Well, the activity of the young dragon's sperm, the proportion of healthy sperm, the proportion of forward movement. Adult dragon. The giant dragon in its prime. Yes. The older the dragon, the more sperm activity it does decline. Although the decline is not too much, not as tragic as that of humans, but the defense of dragon eggs is probably very strict. Sperm activity is too low and cannot break through the barrier at all. Help me tell the mature dragon who needs service. I can give it a try, but there is no guarantee of success. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1652. The mature dragon in need of service, the black dragon born hard, was really moved by me. Germ cells are not precious. These male giant dragons don't live with their wives every day and have to pay public food every day. Especially adult dragons and young dragons, most of them don't even have wives yet. No matter what, he would scatter his reproductive cells on dragon beasts, demonic lizards, and various female and even male creatures in his territory. For the common benefit of the dragon clan, it is not a problem to contribute a little to the mage tower. And they are black dragons. If it is a gold dragon, silver dragon, brass dragon, etc., it may require a lot of persuasion and cajoling, as well as exchange of interests and so on. Black dragon? How can such a thing happen to a black dragon? Either hand it over obediently, or I'll beat you until you hand it over. The key is that he really needs this research himself. He is nearly 1,000 years old and will soon enter old age. He has not impregnated his wife or any female dragon for 300 years. Even among the female creatures around him, such as cloud giants, lizardmen, ogres, and dragon beasts, he has not gotten any of his relatives or other female creatures pregnant for at least 50 years. This made the black dragon born hard a little nervous. Am I going to die? Am I too old? Am I can't have any more children? No. Although I have lived for more than 900 years, lived with 3 female dragons, and laid 5 clutches of eggs, only 7 of my children have survived to adulthood so far. I want more kids. More whelps. More children means a stronger family, which means that they can seize more territory and have more resources. Big sales and discounts during the experiment. As long as 30 germ cells are provided as experimental materials and meet the requirements, Master Nordmark will personally help with assisted reproduction. The only problem is this: mature dragons are harder to find. Can we use young and adult dragons instead? Greed kept writing experimental ideas in his scratch pad as he brushed and brushed. When I heard this request, I paused with my pen tip, put the pen holder against my chin, and remained silent for a long time. Let's do this. First, 10 young dragons and 10 adult dragons will line up at the mage tower and call in according to my requirements. The mature dragons can find as many as they can. If not, they will just come in person. After giving in like this, Gretel quickly obtained a sufficient amount of dragon spirit, and came to the answer he expected. As age increases, even for dragons, sperm motility decreases. If it drops to a certain level, it is very likely that it will not be possible to fertilize the female dragon's eggs. What should we do? The black dragon born hard stared hard, stared hard, stared hard, until his eyes were sore, and he could not see through the 2 pieces of glass of the microscope to understand what decreased sperm motility meant. Don't those little dots, tiny dots, and translucent dots all look the same? Who said his sperm motility has dropped? Use your mental power to perceive the power of life. Perceive, perceive, there is no difference in perceiving it. Ah, there is still a way. Greet smiled calmly. We select the sperm with stronger vitality and then send it in to combine with the egg. We have mature spells to send it in and promote the combination, and we have achieved success with other dragons before. Then, how to choose? This still requires research and experimentation. Hurry up then. Needless to say, I also hope it will be soon. Gretel smiled and pushed the black dragon born hard out, turned around and hung up the research topic in the mage tower. Project goal: separation of viable sperm. Topic content: from a tube of semen, separate healthy, complete, energetic sperm that can move forward quickly in a straight line, and move them individually into a complete container. Project evaluation criteria: 1. Transfer speed: the selection and transfer of all viable sperm should be completed within 30 minutes after the semen is liquefied. 2. Transfer safety. The transferred sperm should still have normal vitality after transfer, and the sperm should not be significantly damaged. 3. Transfer accuracy. The transferred sperm contains the total amount of B-level sperm, moving forward slowly or sluggishly, C-level sperm, non-forward movement, moving in place, and D-level sperm, immobile. Shall not be greater than 10%. After the transfer is completed, after the remaining semen, the proportion of viable sperm shall not exceed 20%. 4. Experimental costs. Detailed description of the subject. Note. 1. The ultimate goal of this project is to provide assisted reproduction services for high-level dragons. Therefore, researchers need to consider the corrosiveness of dragon semen. 2. Considering the rarity of dragon semen, it is recommended that researchers replace it with germ cells of other races in the early stages. 3. This topic can be studied competitively, allowing multiple schools of thought and multiple groups to accept. The request that Master Nordmark put forward in person was, of course, immediately taken seriously by all magicians. Almost as soon as the subject was posted, various prompt sounds such as ding dong, beep, 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 beep rang in the ears of the magicians. There is a subject. There are important issues. Go grab it. Go grab it. Go grab it. The magician who was giving the lecture put down his course materials and rushed out like a whirlwind. The magicians who were listening to the class below followed suit with a bang, each rushing towards their respective terminals. The magicians who were conducting experiments were clanging and clattering. If they could cover the lid, they would cover it. If they could extinguish the source of the fire, they would extinguish it. If they could stop the power, they would stop the power. One by one, they quickly put down their work and went to the information center. Run. As for those who are halfway through the experiment and halfway through the reaction, and really can't stop, they can only look at the backs of their colleagues sadly, and then comfort themselves. With so many people going, they may not be able to grab it. If the experiment is stopped once, at least their losses will be ready. The most important thing is to do the job well. 10 birds in the forest are worth less than one in the hand. What happened to little Gretel? The Lord of Thunder also heard 3 consecutive ding-ding-ding sounds, coming from Archmage Philby's study. After the sound rang out, his disciple stopped reporting and quickly began to swipe at the magic crystal panel. Then, his expression became very strange. Red and white, and finally, the panel was turned off with a snap. It's okay, it's just that he posted a new research topic. Philby tried to answer calmly. The Lord of Thunder became curious, so he pulled the magic crystal panel and drew on it. I always feel that the idea of this topic is somewhat, how should I put it, what is the meaning? Especially the sentence replace with germ cells of other races. The Lord of Thunder also crossed out the magic crystal panel without saying a word. Just as the writing on the screen went out, another smiling face came over from the other side of the desk. What exactly is the subject? It's a subject that has nothing to do with us. The Lord of Thunder calmly turned off the magic crystal panel and moved it back to his disciples. Norrell and Philby, let's continue discussing the accelerator's plan to deal with extraordinary seeds. Well, theoretically, sperm, eggs, or fertilized eggs are also a type of seed. I wonder if that little guy Greet will ever think of using an accelerator to process seeds. Gretel's research topic indeed caused a sensation in the Mage Tower. There is no designated school of thought to take over the project and conduct competitive research, which means that the demanders of this topic are not sure which technical route can be adopted. Then, everyone will work hard. I think we can give this project a try. The head of the School of Thought in the Department of Change was immediately blocked in the office by 3 colleagues. Isn't it just about selecting a specific material from a pile of mixed materials? We are good at it. Our alchemy branch is best at purifying impurities. Although what needs to be purified this time are biologically active cells, it's not difficult at all. We have similar experience, just transplant them and use them. The change department devoted itself to Greet's project with great enthusiasm, and even divided into 3 groups with 3 different ideas. At the same time, Archmage Morton of the Conjuration department also rushed forward with enthusiasm. This magic is very helpful to the naked eye in the treatment work of the medical branch. With it, we can help many patients with fertility difficulties to have children. We must win this project. In the past, magic arrays were used to refine penicillin, streptomycin, and various drugs. Adjusting magic arrays is the strength of the conjuration system. Magicians of the protection and control systems are relatively indifferent to this project. The necromancers rushed forward desperately. Research. You must research. It would be good to get some dragon semen, by the way. Maybe it can be used for dash. Pa, an enhanced version of the mage's hand fell on his forehead. If you want to think about it, don't say it. No, you can't even think about it. When we came here, we all signed a magic contract. We can't use any materials from the Dragon Clan for anything beyond the scope of research. You want to kill us? All in all, half of the Mage Tower was stirred up when one of Gretel's research topics came up. The quietest ones are the magicians of the plasticity department. Half of them did chromosome sequencing, and they were so good at it. After spending so much effort before, it was finally possible to develop a standard procedure for gel electrophoresis. The next step is to further analyze a large number of Dragon Clan extraordinary points. The other half were carried by Archmage Philby to Gretel's territory, the Mage Tower equipped with an accelerator, or in other words, only an accelerator. There are so many projects to study in the accelerator, and throwing 20 people into it is just a drop in the ocean. Not to mention, the Lord of Thunder has arrived, and he is personally directing the research work of the accelerator. It seems that there will be a lot more research projects. With such a cutting-edge topic, such high-end guidance, and such rich feedback, it is naturally impossible for the Department of Plastic Surgery to be interested in the sperm purification project. The only thing that can disturb them is, "Hey, man, can you give me a little, he. Roll." Research materials are a big problem. For example, what is the source of the semen used for purification? Animal semen? Stag? Male wolf? Breeding pig? Magic lizard? False dragon? Yaren? Or dragon beast? Dragons are hard to deal with, but dragon beasts are still easy to deal with. Or, humans. Archmage Morton of the Conjuration Department particularly hopes to use human semen directly to transplant the results directly. However, the magicians who can come to work on Dragon Island are already very old, and their output is very limited. Well, the leading stags in the herd are all of hunting age, old stags. Old stags are harder to find. Male wolf? Male wolves too. Old alpha wolves will be kicked out of the pack and become wanderers after being defeated. Why can't you jerk me off? Nonsense, of course I can't jerk you off. It's not the estrus period yet. When is the estrus period of the magic lizard? How do I know? You can go to the natural cult opposite and ask. Dragon beast. Why can't this dragon beast be pulled out? Go to the transformation department and ask. Over there, who is the one who specializes in dragon-shaped transformation? Idiot. You should ask the control department for this kind of thing. Boom boom boom, boom boom boom, the alchemists, the conjuration magicians, and the necromancers bumped into each other at the door of the laboratory of the control department. After hearing their request, Mrs. Elisa of the control department turned blue. The objects of our spells are people. They are people. Not dragon beasts. Not other beasts. What kind of male deer, male wolf, or breeding pig you want to win? Just think of your own way. Get out. Well, if you want to get rich, start by pulling down trees. No, if you want to engage in magic research, start by pulling down dragons. If you can't get rid of dragons, then start with other animals. The magicians of several other departments were sprayed with disgrace and retreated in dismay. The alchemists set up a magic circle and began to purify. First, we need to select a sperm with high motility and put it into the magic array as a sample, and then let the magic array purify sperm with similar characteristics. I caught at least 100 sperm in this handful. Dilute it. Keep fishing. Dilute it again. Fish it again. Why is the activity getting lower and lower? Is there something wrong with the diluent? How about adding some activity to it? Like, a healing spell. Or add diluted holy water. 110 dilution, 1:100 dilution, all the way to 1:1000 dilution, use distilled water, use physiological saline, dilute with pure liquid of semen, and then do it one by one. If Gretel had read about sperm selection, Gretel would have told them that there are many ways to select sperm. Upstream method, gradient centrifugation method, electrophoresis method, electrokinetic potential method, hyaluronic acid binding method, an XNV selection method, morphology selective sperm injection technology, IMSI, microfluidic chip method, and so on. Every technology has countless details. For example, what density of centrifugal fluid was used in the earliest gradient centrifugation method? The ratio of centrifuge liquid? How long does it take to centrifuge, and what is the centrifugation speed? However, Greed knew nothing about this. Therefore, he could only close his eyes, pretend not to know anything, and let the magicians go crazy. Ah! Can anyone help me get some dragon semen? My demon doll was trampled. Is it too late to borrow a skeleton from the necromancy department? Reference papers for this article. Research progress on sperm selection in assisted reproduction. Research on sperm selection based on microfluidic chip technology. Establishment of a new sperm selection method and research on related regulatory mechanisms. Analysis of sperm selection methods for intrauterine artificial insemination in infertile patients. The protective effect of resveratrol on oxidative stress damage during sperm selection. Human serum albumin prefers sperm selection of two types of abnormal human semen. Etc., etc. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1653. The magicians were tortured to the point of death. Of course, assisted reproduction has been developed for decades at least. In vitro fertilization technology alone has been iterated for 1, 2, or 3 generations. And sperm selection is only a branch of auxiliary technology of IVF technology, and this branch of auxiliary technology has many branches. Every bifurcation is worthy of the hard work of one group, several groups, or many laboratories of researchers, and the most brilliant, energetic, and creative time of their lives. Gretel's researchers in his previous life were like this, and so are the magicians in this life. Large numbers of magicians threw themselves into research without hesitation, dealing with various magic arrays, various liquids, and various instruments. Fail, fail, fail again, fail again. Gretel didn't give them any guidance either. After all, he doesn't understand it himself, and a layman can never guide an expert. Moreover, following the path of the previous life, liquids, centrifuges, densities, and the pharmaceutical industry and processing standards in this world are all inadequate. If you count on this road, you will die. We still have to rely on magic, and to rely on magic, we must give full play to the subjective initiative of magicians and their imagination. Greed simply made a fuss, then listened patiently to their discussion, patiently provided resources, and waited patiently. After waiting for half a month, his efforts were finally rewarded, albeit in a way he had never expected. What? Gretel could hardly believe his eyes or ears. You used the method of selecting bacteria, to select sperm with high energy. Yes, teacher. Anivia still stood upright in front of him, smiling. The main thing is to have technical reserves. With reserves, it will be more convenient to make some improvements. Greet began to rub his head. He has really been away from Nevis for too long, and he cares too little about his disciples. Understand the general progress of the research and give a general research direction. I will not go into the details at all. So, he still doesn't know that Anivia, with a group of natural priests, is making powerful energy bacteria. Why did you think of doing this? How far have you achieved it now? Come on, tell us carefully. He stretched out his hand and asked his disciple to sit down. Anivia followed his instructions and sat across from the desk, straightened out her thoughts, and said seriously. It's like this. When we were treating penicillin, we found that penicillin failed in some patients. We took samples for culture and found that some bacteria that originally responded to penicillin could not be killed by it. Resistance. Greet nodded slightly and muttered softly. Anivia pondered for a moment and said slowly. After a lot of experiments, we found that these bacteria are divided into two situations. One is the drug resistance you mentioned, teacher, which mainly occurs in ordinary patients. There is always a small number of bacteria that are not killed by penicillin. After they reproduce for many generations, they will become resistant to penicillin. Yes, this is the reason for drug resistance. Greet continued to nod. So later on, the dosage of medicine became larger and larger. The inflammation that could be suppressed with 500,000 units at first was gradually increased to 1 million units, 2 million units, 15 million units. At the same time, new antibiotics are constantly being developed and iterated. Cephalexin, sphradine, cefaclor, ceftazidime, cefpirome, ceftaroline, all the way to meropenem, new drugs and new bacteria are chasing each other. So what do you guys do? Two methods. Anivia composed herself and answered analytically. The first one is to use magic to sweep away the new bacteria. Even though it has mutated, it is still the same kind of bacteria. After sweeping it away, Gretel opened his mouth and closed it again. Okay, this method is indeed unique to this world. What's the effect? The effect is very good. If this patient is infected again, the probability of developing penicillin resistance is less than 1%. Now we are promoting the recording of drug use. If a patient becomes ill again after using penicillin or streptomycin 10 times, he must use magic to sweep away the germs to slow down the evolution of the germs. This idea is quite good, but the implementation is very problematic. For example, it is difficult for soldiers who have been away for a long time to keep good records. For example, the cost of using magic to wash livestock that are heavily exposed to antibiotics is too high. Forget it, let's take it one step at a time. Countless thoughts flashed through Gretel's mind, and he could only nod. You've done a pretty good job. Submit a detailed report later. If necessary, I can also join your promotion work. Yes. Thank you, teacher. Anivia's eyes lit up. Gretel smiled and pressed his palms to her, and said calmly. So, what about another situation? There is another kind that mainly happens to extraordinary people. Anivia frowned in embarrassment and sorted out her thoughts. Teacher, you also know that extraordinary people rarely get sick. Even if they do get sick, they are often suppressed by their powerful self-healing abilities. However, some extraordinary people are particularly unlucky. The bacteria absorb their power and grow stronger. In Gretel's mind, the dark green moss clinging to the senior sister's shoulders and deeply embedded in her flesh quickly appeared. A level 18 moss monster, or in other words, a level 18 moss monster. Since mosses can have higher order existences, why can't bacteria have higher order existences? The world is so big, What can't be there? So, we tried to isolate, culture, and select these high-strength bacteria, and use similar methods to cultivate high-strength antibiotics. Speaking of this, her eyes lit up and she was very interested. Teacher, the ores you brought back from the elf forest have played a great role. If the ores are nearby, the penicillin will be more likely to mutate, and it will be easier for powerful beings to appear. Gretel was silent. Although radioactive irradiation is the only way to cultivate various organisms and make them mutate, you are too self-taught. Of course, not every culture can produce powerful penicillium. Moreover, even if it is produced, not all penicillium in every batch will be powerful mutants. This requires separation, and we must try every means to separate it. So nature priests and magicians joined forces to improve the way strains were measured. Originally, the identification technique could measure the magic aura to determine the power of a certain item. Now, it only needs to refine, and refine the measurement. Down to a certain bacterium. Down to a certain strain. Measure how strong they are, which strain in a certain petri dish absorbs enough energy and is the strongest one. Teacher, you have found a way to use a microscope to see chromosomes, and we have benefited a lot. Anavia continued to report. The measured and selected bacteria or strains can be directly observed with a microscope and electron microscope to see the number of extraordinary points in the chromosome. This mutual verification can improve the measurement method very quickly. The important thing is that they have this condition. If the microscope and electron microscope is missing, their mage tower will not be missing either. If other magicians want one, they have to queue up, spend a lot of money, and go to the alchemy guild to put in a good word. If Anavia wants to use it, she can just say hello to Uncle Philby and borrow one directly. So it was a smooth journey, and they cultivated and selected extraordinary penicillin, extraordinary streptomycin, and extraordinary other antibiotics. After the experiment, the effect is quite impressive. It has a good killing effect on the extraordinary bacteria that breed in the bodies of extraordinary people. In the culture dish of miscellaneous bacteria, the method of purifying extraordinary bacteria and strains is just an incidental branch of the cultivation process. So, we modified the purification method and got what you need. The main problems are the corrosion resistance modification of the vessels, and the measurement and adjustment of energy. Gretel was silent. Extraordinary bacteria, extraordinary antibiotics, this idea was so wild and unimaginable that he couldn't find anything to say. After being silent for a while, he coughed lightly, stood up, and said, "Then let's verify the results. So far, no other group has reported results. Your results can be used, and the reward for this project is yours." For this verification, the Black Dragon Bornhard got the news from somewhere and came to the scene in person. Not only was he present, but he also followed Gretel every step of the way. If the verification is successful, you can proceed to the next step, right? I can have a new whelp, right? There's no need to study anything else, right? Gretel was very annoyed. However, the research materials were provided by the other party, so he could only endure it. He could only endure it until he took a tube, to be precise, a flask of research materials, and handed it to Anivia. You can verify with peace of mind and don't worry about anything else. If you make a result, you will be rewarded with a result. I will worry about other things. Anivia flew away. The magic devices of their group have been tested by Warcraft, Pseudo-Dragon, and Dragon Beast for several rounds before, and all of them have successfully passed. This time, in full view of everyone, she used a long needle to extract a little liquid, put it into the measuring end of the magic circle, and then put the entire special flask into the extraction end. The magic circle was buzzing and colorful. About half an hour later, a stream of crystal liquid rose from the flask and fell into another smaller special flask. Sampling, microscopic examination, sampling again, microscopic examination again, changing people, sampling again, and microscopic examination again. Finally, Gretel straightened up with satisfaction, clapped his hands, and faced Mr. Black Dragon. "We've got it done, what about you? When will the female dragon who is willing to give birth to your child arrive?" You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1654. The Black Dragon Bornhard is not without a wife. But, how to put it, the gap between dragons and dragons is probably a little bigger than the gap between dragons and humans. Like Sarala's parents, they had been married for hundreds of years, had 2 litters of children, and still lived together affectionately. Fighting together, sleeping together, worrying about the future of our children together. Among the golden dragons and silver dragons, there are quite a few such couples. Even if the relationship between husband and wife is relatively estranged, various gem dragons will have sex with each other every now and then after raising their children to live with their own treasures. However, the relationship between black dragon, red dragon, blue dragon, etc., and their husband and wife, is another matter. Young dragons and adult dragons are often willing to be with older dragons and can get some free guidance and protection. Such as magical guidance, such as being able to hunt on the edge of an older dragon's territory. For another example, if I encounter an attack that I cannot resist, I can turn around and run back, claiming that I am protected by so and so. As for older dragons in their prime, even legendary dragons, their spouses rarely have people of the same age group. On the contrary, they enjoy those partners who are full of youth and vitality, young and beautiful. As a result, their relationship as husband and wife is relatively unstable. Young female dragons are willing to have fun with older dragons, but having children is another matter. When older male dragons really want to have children, they often need to use other methods. Gretel had heard all these gossips intermittently. He heard various versions from his brother-in-law Vaska, from the dragons who sent their relatives to seek transformation, and from the dragons stationed in the mage tower as liaison officers. However, Greet's symptoms always go in his left ear and come out in his right ear. Which giant dragon doesn't match up with which dragon? People and things don't match up. As for people's faces and things, they don't match up. What a joke. Therefore, when the black dragon Bornhard came to the door with a woman with long wavy black hair, a fit figure, but a very bruised face, claiming that this was the female dragon who gave birth to his child, Gretel became wary. Hey, everywhere I can see is bruised and swollen, but I don't know what's going on with the invisible areas. Are there any large soft tissue contusions? Are there any fractures or fractures? Are there any more injuries? Black Dragon Bornhard, I know you are a mature dragon who is about to enter the legend. You are very strong and can fight well. This female black dragon couldn't have been beaten hard by you and forced to agree, right? What is the mandatory reporting system for medical personnel? Forget it, don't think about it, there is no such system in this world, and besides, the lady opposite is also an adult. Greet struggled for a while, and then struggled again, but in the end he still didn't struggle with his conscience. He looked left and right, and his eyes moved around the crowd. Elder Batista, who followed and came to watch the gossip, cross out, and watch the new experiment, looked calm and had no intention of interfering at all. It seemed that the state of this female black dragon was completely normal in his eyes. The senior sister standing in the crowd frowned slightly and took a step back into the crowd without saying a word. From the looks of it, if the female black dragon doesn't call for help, she probably doesn't want to do anything about it. Elder Knox of the Natural God cult had a blank look in his eyes, as if he hadn't seen anything. Besides, This man's force value was not high enough to drag him in. Teacher and mistress went to Sky Dragon City and are not here today. Alas, no one supports me, and there is no place to report. Greed had no choice but to stop the black dragon Bornhard outside, invited the lady into the conversation room alone, and pushed a pre-prepared notice in front of her. First of all, Ms. Bokina, let's confirm. You voluntarily participated in the Mage Tower project and tried to conceive a child for Mr. Bornhard, right? Yes. Ms. Bokina, you know clearly that this pregnancy was assisted by magic and was not conceived by you and Mr. Bornhard through a natural process, right? Yes, yes. I know. The female black dragon Bokina is already a little impatient. Gretel tried to remain patient. Then, you clearly know that this kind of spell-assisted pregnancy has a probability of failure and may require multiple attempts, right? Yes, I know. This spell may also cause some damage and pain to your body. Of course, we will try our best to use healing spells to remedy it and try not to cause you irreparable damage. I know all this, hurry up. Bokina had already pulled out the notice sheet and read it at a glance. She just glanced at it, then she raised her hand and fingernails painted with crimson kaodin swept across the paper, leaving a secret mark in the shape of a thorn flower. I've read it all, I understand it all, let's go. Hurry up, I'm still in a hurry. She threw the notice back to Gretel, got up and left. Gretel held down the back of her hand, pressed his palm and wrist on the notice sheet, leaned forward, and stared into her eyes. Ms. Bokina, let's make one final confirmation. Are you willing to participate in the assisted reproduction project of the Mage Tower out of your own free will, voluntarily and without force, and are you willing to give birth to a child for Mr. Bornhard? The impatient and anxious look on the female black dragon's face suddenly disappeared. She stared steadily into Gretel's eyes, and saw his young and energetic face from his sincere eyes, then moved to the side and looked at Cyrilla's concerned eyes. After pondering for a moment, he suddenly smiled. What are you worried about? I really volunteered. As for these. She raised her hand, touched the bruise on her face, and took a breath. He wants me to help him give birth to a child. Of course, the reward must be sufficient. Nothing less will do. In order to negotiate terms, I fought with him several times. The beatings were extremely severe. Don't look at me like this, he has suffered so much, definitely not lighter than me. Since this is a full and candid exchange of views between you, then just be happy. Gretel swallowed back everything he said. Different people have different situations, different races, and have different customs and habits. As a human being, as a doctor, he can just watch, and there is no need to intervene. Greet, holding back her complaints, asked the female black dragon Bokina to go out, and asked Bornhard to sign the same notice. Then, we started to advance step by step according to the established process. Physical examination. Vital energy check. Semen extraction. Screening of viable sperm. Great reproduction technique, take action. A piece of green light, silently, poured out from Greet's hand. It carries specially selected strong sperm into the female dragon's body, forcing the sperm to combine with the egg, and the fertilized egg is enhanced. Okay, Gretel clapped his hands. The fertilization work has been completed. Next, it depends on whether the fertilized egg can divide normally and develop normally in the mother's body. If it can develop, everything is fine. If it cannot develop, we will find a way. The black dragon Bornhard stared at Greet suspiciously. Is this good? Is this good? For such a short moment, the magic circle flashed once, then a green light flashed once, and then everything was fine? He didn't see anything clearly. Feel nothing. He thought it would take a long time and a very large-scale spell. After all, if you want a dragon to get pregnant, that's not just a little trouble, it's a big trouble. Back then, when he and his first wife, second wife, third wife, wanted to have children, they had been together for a long, long time and spent countless efforts to produce a clutch of eggs. The young magician in front of him waved his hand, and then there was it. "How are you feeling?" He sniffed, then sniffed again, trying to smell Pocona's scent. However, nothing could be smelled. The scent of the female dragon had not changed, neither particularly warm nor particularly cold. Use another spell to see the magic aura on Pocona. It's still so bright, there's only one light, no extra points of light shining in the field of vision. Feel the vitality of the female black dragon again. Well, this is really not something he can feel. He is really not good at this. He turned his head hesitantly and looked around. Pocona lowered her head and pondered for a moment, then shook her head slightly. "My power has been condensed in the place where the child was conceived, but I haven't felt the power being absorbed yet. Maybe, it's too small. Maybe it's really too small. A fertilized egg, no matter how strong its ability to absorb power is, can't absorb much, right? It has to be copied dozens or hundreds of times before the mother body can feel its power being absorbed." Elder Batista followed and closed his eyes slightly, his spiritual power passing through Pocona's body. After pondering for a moment, he shook his head slightly. "I can feel a different existence. It's probably the fertilized egg that little Greet mentioned. However, it's not yet certain that the fertilized egg can be retained. It will take a few more days. Well, at least 7 or 8 days, right? At least 7 days." Elder Nox stepped forward slowly, released his spiritual power, and circled the female black dragon. "You can already feel a very subtle vitality. As for the new life and the mother's body, generally speaking, it takes as little as 5 or 6 days and as many as 7 or 8 days. Madam, you only need to wait here for about 10 days. You can see the results." "What? 10 more days?" "10 days is neither short nor long." 10 days later, whether it was the Silver Dragon Elders, the priests of the nature religion, or the nature walkers of the Elves, they all confirmed one thing. The female black dragon Bogina is pregnant successfully. "I really did it for you." The black dragon Bornhard put his hands behind his back and circled Gretel, turning once clockwise, once counterclockwise, and once again clockwise. "Hey, Master Nordmark, do you have a high success rate in doing this job? If so, I'll get a group of friends over right away. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right?" Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1655. The Lord of Thunder has been a little annoyed lately. His attack power has reached its limit now. It's really reached its limit. Unless there is a breakthrough in research, the output power of a single attack has already reached the upper limit. Attack distance, attack speed, attack range, attack frequency, these sub-items have reached their limits. If they want to increase, they have to calm down and study for a while. It is necessary to build a mage tower of sufficient size, with enough research equipment, and then bring a wave of people over to help him. Well, Baebo is sitting in Nevis and cannot move. Philby is already here. Do you want to call back 2 of his disciples who are traveling in different dimensions? After all, there are resources here, cutting-edge topics, and his own real-time guidance. If you can't advance any further, that's too bad. But, the Mage Tower. The Mage Tower on Dragon Island. Negotiating with Dragon Island requires resources, a Mage Tower, an accelerator, all kinds of things, none of which fall from the sky. They all have to be negotiated with the Dragon Clan. And negotiating. The Lord of Thunder is actually not good at negotiating. What the Lord of Thunder is better at is direct threats, taking action, or it's up to you. If you don't meet my requirements, I won't do it. The problem is that the negotiators sent by the Dragon Clan stick to them like a piece of brown candy. People will not eat if they are directly threatened. It's really not to the point of taking action right away, especially not to the point of blowing up the sun right away. It's a waste, they feel aggrieved, and they say oops, 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 it's not that we won't give it, come on, let's talk about it again. The Lord of Thunder was extremely annoyed and wanted to leave, but he was a little reluctant to part with most of the Mage Tower, and most of the accelerator that he was about to get. However, just today, the negotiator's attitude changed 180 degrees. Want a Mage Tower? No problem. Material. Give, give, give. Accelerator. The accelerator is a bit difficult and requires a lot of high-end materials. Give us some time to get it together. By the way, Your Excellency Lord of Thunder, you see that the Wizard Tower will be built soon. Can you also help us? Mage Nordmark has been able to help an adult dragon become pregnant. That, you also know recently that we have suffered relatively large casualties and are in urgent need of more descendants. Can you help convince your disciples? Lord of Thunder. There is a saying among ordinary humans that in the first half of one's life one should respect one's father and respect one's son, and in the second half of one's life one should respect one's son and respect one's father. As a transcendent, a legend, and a third-level legend, he thought he would not be able to enjoy this kind of treatment. Who knows? As a third-level legend, he did not expect to be able to catch the light of his youngest disciple, a level 17 magician. Although it was hard to explain, the Lord of Thunder still flew down to Sky Dragon City and went to Gretel's Mage Tower for a while. Otherwise, the other party was very attentive and said, "You just need to go and take a look, and the Mage Tower will be in place immediately." Furthermore, as a teacher, you also need to be concerned about how far little Gretel's research has progressed and what problems she has encountered. It is definitely not for the purpose of colluding with the disciples so that they can stand on the same front and bargain with the Dragon Clan together. Thinking of this, I just left. The Lord of Thunder has set up a fixed-point teleportation array at his residence in Sky Dragon City, leading directly to Dragon Island. At this moment, I decided to go down. In a flash of light, I had already stepped into the lower realm. In another flash, I was standing in front of Gretel's Mage Tower. Well, it's so lively. So many dragons. Young dragons, adult dragons, mature dragons, noisy, coming in and out. Some spread their wings and flew around the Mage Tower. Some lie down boredly on nearby hills, in lakes, or anywhere they like, flapping their dragon wings and digging at the ground, digging out big holes one after another. Some also turned into human forms, leaning against the wall of the Mage Tower, or doing something casually, sitting, leaning, lying down, whispering to each other, looking at the Mage Tower and whispering. Did you hear that? Is this why you're here too? I didn't want to come, but my grandfather insisted on letting me make this trip. Well, actually I don't need this technology. I'm still young and can give birth anytime I want. But my uncle insisted that I make this trip. Lord of Thunder. Except in Sky Dragon City, strictly speaking, around the flower-like conference hall in Sky Dragon City, he has never seen so many dragons. Are these guys okay? Have they all come to greet? He concentrated slightly and released a bit of legendary pressure. In an instant, there was chaos around the Mage Tower, with exclamations, shouts, and the sound of dragons flapping their wings, all ringing out. Leave. Leave. A legend has arrived. It's best to stay as far away as possible. The Lord of Thunder walked in leisurely against the flow of people. When I walked to greet Study, I saw that his robe was crooked, his hair was messed up, and he looked gray and gray. When teachers and students met, the little guy breathed a sigh of relief. Teacher Chien is here. Fortunately, you are here. I was thinking about escaping to Cyrillus territory and staying in seclusion for a while. These guys are too noisy. I said I can't do it. What can't be done? It can't be done. Let every dragon egg hatch safely, and then every baby dragon awaken normally. Greed pulled the Lord of Thunder to his desk, flipping through the information and showing it to him. The strengthening work of dragon eggs has not yet been fully studied. Which chromosome points are strengthened in dragon eggs to ensure their awakening? It has not been studied yet. Teacher, tell them, can you give me a while? Shouldn't you tell them yourself about this kind of thing? The Lord of Thunder was full of complaints. However, seeing the young disciple staring at him eagerly, he could only sigh and wave. While I'm in the mage tower, those dragons probably won't dare to pester you. But I won't be here for long. Forget it. If there are any technical difficulties, you can report them all at once, and I'll give you some advice if I can solve them. Just give it a try. Thank you, teacher. Gretel breathed a sigh of relief. He turned around, dragged a magic crystal board with a long cable, sent it to the Lord of Thunder, and started to cut it open. This is a recent technical difficulty and a direction to be researched. 20 lines per page. At least 10 pages. In other words, at least 200 technical difficulties and research directions. For a moment, the Lord of Thunder wanted to smash the magic crystal plate onto his disciple's head. What do you think I am? An automatic wishing machine. If you throw in gold coins, it will naturally spit out satisfactory results. You haven't even thrown the gold coin yet.